Okay, so we're heading into our next session, our track at truLondon, and we're now going to talk about social. Is it just a big hype, and how do candidates feel about the rise of social in job search? Mervyn Dinnen, recruitment expert and digital guru, is going to lead this track, so no pressure. Over to you.
Yes and no. Right, and the next topic? No. Well, I'll start with some stats. I'm Mervyn from JobSite. I'm content community manager. We're part of Evenbase, a global digital recruitment group. We do quarterly research into job seeker and recruiter behaviour, and it's been edging up. Job seekers, route to market, job seekers. It's a different sample of 500 each time, and they're always asked, which of the following are you currently using in your job search? And social and business networks is now running about 50%. So kind of half of the people, but it's a different 500 every time. So it's not kind of the same guys are kind of adopting it more. And at the moment, it hovers between 45 and 50% who say that they're using social and business networks.
But that's interesting, because the same data that's just come out for HR managers is that 50% of HR managers are using social.
Yeah, the business community, the recruiter behaviour side, and that's direct recruiters, it's not recruitment agencies. That has tipped up to kind of 50, but it normally operates at a lower level. I mean, it normally is around 35 to 40 on the businesses. But then you see you've got a blurring. I mean, it's at what point, a connection on LinkedIn, somebody you worked with 5 years ago, what network is that? Is that a business network, a social network? I kind of initially met Laurie and Steve through Twitter, but kind of if one of them got me a job and said, how did you get it? I'd say a friend, personal contact, because that's what they are now. So I think there's a definition side as well.
And because of the way that social networking and LinkedIn and such, the lines are blurred anyway, because it's actually probably a multitude, a number of reasons why you can't always track it back to one example. But I think it may be the opportunity, the fact that it's brought them into another space that then has created the job opportunity. That in a sense, that's probably where there's kind of like a difficult to read data like that sometimes and actually interpret it. For
recruiters, LinkedIn is a social network, but we both go to digital marketing conferences. They don't call LinkedIn social media
because they don't social.
They don't. It's not. It's just a business.
How would they classify it?
It's just a business networking site, but when they're advising clients on kind of brand marketing campaigns, they're looking at Twitter, they're looking at Facebook, Pinterest, Google+. They're not looking at LinkedIn, because that's very much a person-to-person. That's a recruitment thing.
Maybe from a business-to-business perspective, they might put something in around the
do we know somebody in that business that might know this? But I mean, it's purely for contacts as opposed to anything else.
So in America, there's one definitive piece of research that's published every year, and it's called the Source of Hire Report. And it's published by this man by the name of Jerry Crispin, and he's actually looking at where people are hired from, doing the deep analytical research. The number one source of hire is employee referral. Number two, I believe, is your career website. And number three is job boards. But what's interesting out of all of that is the influence of social media. So it's not necessarily something that can be directly traced to your point. And social media has this big ballooning effect, right? We incorporate everything in there, but it's really just a social networking platform. So in that case, it would be LinkedIn, or it would be Twitter, or it would be Pinterest. But what it's doing is it's influencing the source of hire, but not necessarily directly correlating to the source of hire.
If you look at the slides, one of the conclusions is that over the last 4 years, the actual increase in job seekers using social media doesn't appear that large, but it impacts the way content is shared. It impacts the way opportunities are shared. It impacts the way you reach out. You see a job, and now through LinkedIn, people who can connect you to that person who can. So it's changed the behaviour. It's a bit like we don't, as part of the research, we ask those with smartphones what activities they're doing on their smartphones. We don't ask people if they check emails, because quite frankly everybody with a smartphone uses it to check emails. So a lot of job seekers use email job alerts to let them know when there's a new job. So that doesn't really get picked up in research, because somebody might say, well, the job hunting I do on my phone is I search for jobs on a job board. But actually, if it's opening job alert emails, then everybody does it.
But also, so I just went through a job change in the past 3 months, and the first place I went to was Twitter. Not looking for a job, but looking for what could I do? What fits what I'm looking to do? So I was looking on Twitter, LinkedIn, looking at other people's CVs of how do they progress through their career. Places I wanted to be in 5 years, 10 years. What was their progression? And there were a few people that were very similar to starting in support, went into product and sales and things like that. And now they're VP level of companies. So it's I started looking for that, and then I started looking for those job titles and events that were going on. How can I meet real people and start building a real life network as well as an online network? But the first place I went to was Twitter, and then I found Silicon Milk Roundabout over in Shoreditch, and from there was able to get my current job. So knowing that I started with Twitter and that it led directly to that, I would say yes, social media maybe not directly got me this position, but heavily influenced it.
But it's a signpost. It's a signposting exercise. Like 15 years ago, we look at a local newspaper to find out where the job fairs were, when the job. So we didn't have the internet. We had little access to it, and we would look for those kind of things. And you'd have to consistently. Now you can do it fast. Why wouldn't any job seeker do the same thing? I question whether there's a lot of people who are that intuitive and that smart. Like as you were, to think about how I could genuinely research through social media rather than, because I still think the average social media user is not an intelligent researcher of social media.
But also, smartphone devices differ greatly. So one smartphone may have a screen like this, and somebody else may have an iPad. So it's a wonderful Galaxy device. It's amazing how cruddy information looks on some of these devices. So for me, if I had this tiny iPhone, and P.S. my eyes are fading because I'm getting a little bit older, I wouldn't necessarily be so inclined. And so what we're seeing in America is a heavy use of public libraries and public computers being used. So people going into the library and using those.
That's an interesting social behaviour.
It is.
Driving, because I don't think we've seen that in the UK.
No. So my sister-in-law is a librarian and actually gives out quite a bit of advice on job boards and sites to visit, because she sees people coming in to use a bigger screen to actually follow up on some of the initiatives.
So that's a shift then. So libraries becoming job advisory centres.
And librarians becoming research scientists.
You see, what it is in America, they can't buy supersized Diet Cokes anymore, so they supersized screens.
But everywhere else. But it's true, librarians are becoming in a lot of ways sourcers, social scientists. So the way our libraries are structured in America, people can call in and ask questions. So a lot of people use that for job
Digital
resources.
librarian, I'm adding that to my list.
That's a social job, isn't it, as well?
But I agree with your point, because for me now, if I want to search something, I'll go to Twitter, because it's that real-time information. So it's like if you want statistics and you Google it, sometimes, this happened to me yesterday, you pull up something that's 2010 and it's kind of like, well, if I'm talking about mobile today in a track, I don't want to talk about statistics in 2010.
No, it's changed.
I talk about something that's tweeted today. And I think you're right, it's signposting. So how candidates are using social isn't for the obvious looking for a job, it's looking for a lead or it's looking for information.
I think part of my behavior was influenced the fact that I've been in the recruiting sector for 6 years. I know how recruiters are using it. I know what type of information is on there. All right, so True, there's going to be a hashtag for that. There's people at True I should network with, and what are they doing? How are they doing things? So I started following hashtags and doing this and that. And so I think part of it is an education piece of this is what you can do. Because so many people think of Twitter as, I had a really crappy cereal for breakfast, right? And that's not what it is. There are people that are doing that, but ignore them.
Or a broadcast medium as well, rather than an engagement.
But doesn't it have to, in a sense, it has to be like that, because we're talking about pretty much active candidates right now, but we're also, a lot of us are always a passive candidate, so we're engaging on social media for that purpose. So don't we almost have to have it as that kind of medium, and use it for networking purposes, but also appreciate that.
Yeah, you need the cornflake eaters. You need people who.
They're
part of a network of people.
But there's so many people that think that it's just that.
But Twitter is actually out there educating people right now. So one of the things Twitter has done is partnered with Mashable and an organization in America called called NPR, which is like our BBC, and they're actually having these chats where they're trying to inform and educate people in 140 characters about what it's like to be a passive job seeker and an active job seeker on the Twitter platform. So they are doing, Twitter in and of itself as a corporation are doing a public service and trying to educate the job seeking population and the work population on how to find a job on that platform. So that's good.
Because we were saying that, we were leading a track yesterday around networking, and it's the same kind of thing, that what we're saying now for graduates and school leavers, kind of how to use social media in your job search is an essential life skill.
That's right.
Isn't
It is,
it?
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's becoming that. This isn't just a, you know, however many years ago we'd have been talking about, is social media necessary?
But it's also becoming a professional skill as well. I mean, and I'm pleased to see that. Actually, I realised that one of the recruitment people from Future Publishing in Bath were an example of a company who are saying we want to hire people who are socially able in all the roles that incorporate any kind of consumer, supplier, relationship interaction, because that's how the future of communication is going to be led. If they're already there with people who are savvy, they'll move faster.
Well, at the HR
more
Excellence Awards in January, distinction recruitment went to Bromford, a social housing group in the West Midlands of 1,000 people who the Gotta Love Cake Twitter campaign won them the award. And that is a social housing business where the CEO says that they will only employ people with a digital footprint, because for leaders to be credible in the future, they will need a digital footprint.
Do you remember when that was feared, having a personal brand was something to be scared of in the recruiting process, and now it's a given. If you don't have a personal brand of some kind, along with the soul, right? That's important as well. But if you don't, then you don't do any good to your organization.
I think we're actually still at a stage, though, maybe in the UK, where that fear bit you're talking about is still there a little bit, because people, the average job seeker doesn't know that HR are going to look at their social profile, because they're not that tuned in yet. So the advice that people like us will say about owning their social profile from point of view of managing it to make it publicly acceptable for all purposes is not reaching these people yet. They don't know that, and when somebody tells them it, it's kind of like, my God, you know, how easy it is to look at their Facebook page, even though it's not a
I mean, people use sites, when we keep talking about Twitter, because that's, I suppose, the most obvious one, and kind of Twitter's the platform that kind of created truLondon effectively 3.5 years ago. And as part of my job, I have to monitor and listen to what people say, particularly when we've got adverts running on TV. And it's very easy to be in an environment like this where we're all using it professionally. It's all about connect, engage, share, learn, meet other people, like-minded people, share information. That there is a whole group of people out there who are on Twitter. They're in the 18 to 25 age group. Their bios are things like, I'm a professional nutter, don't follow me. They have 20 followers, all of whom are friends, and they follow like 500 celebrities, brands, and all they do is hurl abuse at them. And they do it to make their followers laugh. People use it in different ways. So there are people in that bracket who probably don't have a clue that, you know, within a few seconds on Google, somebody can link them to that Twitter bio. And I think Google's where it starts, because I know we're talking about social media platforms, but this is the Google generation. If they want an answer to something, they go to Google. And one of the things that I see being given more and more as advice is when you get an interview for a company, go to Google and Google, I used to work at, with the name of the company, or, you know, jobs at, or working at, or I didn't like working at, all the variations, and you'll be amazed what you find. And it doesn't just lead you to Glassdoor, it leads you to personal blogs. It leads you to things people have said, when I used to work at so-and-so, we did this, that's why I left. And odd things like that, which help for the more digitally savvy generation. It helps them build up a picture of what it's like.
What do you think about giving advice to kind of young generation people coming out of work that have had one Twitter account that is very personal, and setting up a second Twitter account, let's say, I'm going back to Twitter again, but that is very much designed to build that kind of professional persona?
So the founder of Google, one of them, has been on record saying that everybody should be able to change their name at the age of 18 to get rid of that digital footprint or everything that's out there. And I think there's something to be said for that, because many of us, we operate with different veils, different masks. And to your earlier points, some HR professionals, recruitment professionals aren't very sophisticated, so it's good to build up good Google juice under a professional name and a professional brand, and try to hide some of that activity. I know if anybody saw some of my digital activity with my cats, they would think, what kind of crazy lady is this, right? But, you know,
but you are your brand.
But I have a different career path. If I were an accountant, it would be a different story.
But I would encourage people, because, I mean, I suppose there is a depends, and there's always been a depends kind of part, but if we're going in if we're asking for people, if businesses are going to social media sites to learn about these people, then they're using social media themselves and will understand the platform in which...
But they're liars, and they're trying to manage and mitigate their risk as well, oftentimes.
Well, they are. Yeah. But so you can't blame somebody for having a real... If the job they do isn't actually going to involve social media, but they just want a good, if they want to, they kind of want that person to have the social profile. It's kind of like a catch-22. You have the social profile, which means you're forward-thinking as a young digital native, but then you get penalised for it because of the content that's on it. But actually, that
again goes to one generation judging another generation by their kind of standards.
Or even
I don't think it depends on generation. I think it's about being aware, though, that, you know, socially, once you put information out there, it's out there, isn't it? And you can clean your digital dirt to a degree.
Well, you can do,
but also the point about the cornflakes, you know, don't have a stream of inane comment, but I think it is about occasionally having a picture of your cat or something else. And I think you said that before, that, you know, if your client wants to talk about cornflakes, talk about cornflakes.
Well, isn't that
an opportunity to have a loose conversation
and
with
that's
them.
the human nature, and surely the fact that a lot more organisations are becoming more authentic, and they're trying to showcase what they're all about. Trying to, I think.
I would love to believe that to be true. I would love it, but I don't
think a lot are attempting to do it, but do they not expect the same thing from a candidate perspective then? You know, that we're human beings, like you said, you like your cats. You know, I might be talking about a film, you might be talking about a book you read, and that's who we are, you know. And if we're going to fit into an organisation, then we surely don't want to pretend to be somebody that we're not.
No, and I tell you
maybe I'm naive and I'm living in
risk management. So when a recruiter hires somebody, they do a specific amount of maths, right? And so they figure out, is this person good? Can they fill the job? Will they be here for more than 18 months? Do they have the qualifications? Will they sue us? And P.S., have they ever done anything risky on social media? And that is intangible right now. And I think as someone like Steve or Merv educates the population, HR will be more informed when they're doing that calculation. But right now, there's some HR professionals who think even a picture of you holding a beer in your hand might be too risky, whereas others say at some point a US president will be on Facebook doing a keg stand. That's in our future, right?
Exactly. I'm going through a recruitment process for a big social media brand at the moment who are expanding the UK, and a lot of the roles are graduate plus 6 months, let's say, roles. And it's been quite eye-opening to see the applications that come through from this, because these are people who want to work in social media, to work in a social media research role, and therefore the fact they're on Twitter is kind of a minimum expectation, really. They're kind of there and in it, but amazingly how many people aren't. But those that are, I would say not one of the, I'm trying to think of maybe how many CVs I went through for this. I'm probably talking like 70 CVs that I had over when I was looking at them over on Monday. I don't think one of those CVs was set up, the Twitter bios was set up in a way, because obviously I linked to the Twitter bio, was set up in a way that says I'm a job seeker, or I'm not one of them. Or they all clearly were. Some of them were in jobs, but the majority of them weren't in jobs. They were doing kind of internships and things like that, which is the ideal entry point for this role. But none of them were set up.
Using it as a platform.
No, even though they were applying for social media. No, I didn't let that affect my decision in the process because it's a junior role. But it astonished me that, again, from a point of view of where the education comes in for these people, if they are going down the route of going, right, this is my chosen career, therefore I need to be seen to be a native in this area, I need to seem to be automatically adaptable to this area. But their tweets are a combination of kind of fairly lurid kind of football banter or dodgy pictures or whatever. And look, I'm not even talking about tweets. The bio. at the top.
Yeah.
So what would you like in a bio? I think that would be.
It's not necessarily what I'd like. I was surprised. I would like for people to
Or people that put no
position
bio.
themselves. There's 160 characters in the bio. So you got that's quite a lot of letters. Like a lot of letters, and you can put who you are and what you are.
That's a
if you see what I mean, at the same
character in
time.
itself, isn't it? 140
You
characters.
can say, if I can get that I'm a recruiter and a couple of other things, blah blah, and a Forest fan and a dad of two, or whatever. In my 160 characters, somebody with a lot less of a story to tell, in a sense, which is often how these kind of things work, can still put character, a bit of personal about themselves, and then kind of like wanting to move into marketing, aiming to move into shows. Your next great social media hire, that kind of thing, basically. That just sort of says, by the way, if you find me, I'm looking for you. I'm getting out.
And this is why it is generational, because they won't. It's not that they're not educated. It is they've grown up. They know nothing else. This is all they know.
Yeah, when it's not educated,
this is how they look at each other.
Ill-advised or not advised.
All it has to be is, if you want a job, you're going to be judged by people older than you, to whom this is a bit alien, this is a bit unusual. They're not used to, when they got their first job, they didn't let everybody know, when they went out on a Saturday night. They hid all the stuff they did, and that's what you're going into. And gradually it will change over the next 5-10 years. When you hire people, I'm sure you will be shocked by some of the things people say, but it's kind of like when we started in the workplace, it was, I'm not having anybody with short hair, spiky hair, and I'm not having any bloke with an earring, and it kind of like what counts as professional is very different.
But at the same time, so there's this article I was reading the other week about this professor at university, and girl didn't like the grade she got on something, and she sent him this flame email, just cutting him to bits, but wouldn't say boo to his face. Like in the next class the next day, just peachy, hi, how are you? Won't say anything. And I think that's part of the problem, is they're treating social media like a soapbox, and they'll say things that they would never say in person. And what
as a blogger, I don't know that.
But
like
some of the things that they're putting out there are just like, would you say that even to one other person in a closed room? And now this is out there for anyone to see forever. And I think that's part of the educational piece is this is permanent. And the only way to get around that is to flood the net with tons of other stuff with your name on it, so this never shows up.
But just
it's either nothing or everything.
Going back to what you said, it's making me think actually whilst you've been talking. Would you rather have one of your 70 candidates who'd written a fantastic bio and really branded themselves well, saying, I'm amazing, I can do this, this and this? Or would you rather have read through their feed and seen actually, are they sharing socially? Are they interacting with people? Are they engaging in...
But it's both, isn't it? It's both.
Or would you... It's again bringing another example to mind, LinkedIn, a classic example. If you search for a social media guru on LinkedIn, in the top 10 posts that you'll probably find people who are that good at personal branding in the fact that they've filled their profiles full of keywords, but they're not actually doing the job. Is it about digging a bit deeper?
Well, it's always about digging a bit deeper, isn't it? Because we can only take these points as a reference point, or and it's there was something mentioned yesterday, there was something online that was mentioned yesterday, I can't remember what the discussion was. Oh, it was on Facebook, I think, about cloud scores. And then advert, about an advert, there was, here we go. But it was, there was a company, I think it was Matt Older put it up, or it was Andy.
The only people who moan about cloud scores are people who think their score should be higher.
Well, no, but this is seriously. This company were advertising for a social media manager that had to have a minimum credit score of this and a minimum cloud score of 60.
Wow.
Rubbish. Absolute rubbish, because I know people who have created some of the most incredible social media brand campaigns who have got a cloud score of 40. Because they are...
Steve, what's your cloud score?
More than 60. No, but the point is they're pros. That doesn't mean they chatter about. They do it.
I know some brilliant people. I know some brilliant people who've created fantastic things who never went to university. But guess what? Nearly every job you fill has to be for a graduate.
University.
So it's no different.
But do they? You don't.
No, but that's what they say.
It's a criteria.
It's a criteria. It's kind of it's a selection criteria. It's a filtering criteria.
It's one of the options.
It's interesting that we're saying about looking into a profile, because it's 3 years ago, it must be. There was a heavy. There used to be these blog talk radio shows going on all the time. Only Steve's is left now. Actually, HR Happy Hour. And there was Bill used to do one. And in fact, it was Bill's. He used to do one very early in the morning for Aussies in the UK, then one at lunchtime for the UK, and then one in the evening for the US.
Goodness.
And what?
I said, my goodness, that's a lot of wasted
never
time.
sleeps.
Yeah. But this came up about, you know, one generation judging another one by their own standards, and there was a very heated debate. And somebody came on saying about, you know, if I'm recruiting a manager, I want a good upstanding. You know, I want somebody that means somebody in the community. So if I look at Facebook and Twitter and I see somebody who is captaining his local cricket team on a Sunday, who's doing this, doing that, that's the kind of guy I want. And somebody else said, well, actually you won't find anything about me like that because I spend Sunday afternoon with my children. So I tend not to put them on Facebook. Does that make me a lesser person? So, well, you know, I'm looking for someone in the community, and somebody else came on and made a valid point. But what is it about that picture that will let you know if they're any good at their job, if they go home and beat their wife and kids, or if they're embezzling their company? Nothing. It's kind of it's an image.
Yeah,
and that's why we can't get
a false process a lot of the time.
It's also 10 years ago. Your last year or your first year working, you go out, you get pissed in the pub, you do something absolutely stupid. The 20 people around you know about it.
Yeah.
Now, that's on Facebook before you wake up.
Yeah.
And you have no control over it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I don't know what the fix is for that, because that also, if it's on Twitter, then you have even less control over it.
But then you see
but it's tied to you.
Yes, I know.
But
it's
that's like
tied
who
to
your real
brands.
friends are as well, isn't it? Not just who you're on.
Yeah, but it's tied to brands as well. It's the same as, you know, what we preach to brands. You know, your brand isn't what you say it is. It's what your customers say it is. It's what your clients say it is. It's kind of, you know, Amazon, you know, the HMV thing. How do I shut down Twitter? You can't. You know, and the Amazon thing last weekend with the T-shirts, it's kind of like nobody from Amazon. It's just like, well, if we ignore it, it'll go away, because it doesn't, because it picks up momentum. So again, it's no different to that. This is what we tell brands. And they just either bury their head in the sand, or then hire a load of content community managers with big clout scores who don't know what they're doing.
But you recruit
who don't know what they're doing.
Never look at their clout score.
In fact, wasn't it you that was pitching Amazon online on Saturday? You need some community managers. I'm sorry if anyone from Amazon's watching.
But do you think, coming back to how candidates use social for job search, that there are different? I mean, you know, obviously there are different generational areas. We get that because clearly Gen Ys are digital natives. So, you know, it's like the 2-year-old, isn't it, trying to flick through a magazine or whatever. So we understand that. What about different sectors in terms of job search? Because I was talking to somebody yesterday about scientists. And I thought that's quite interesting, because scientists are quite collaborative in biotech companies, for example. But I think there's a perception, you know, accountants, for example. Obviously marketeers, recruitment people, social media, we would hope would use social media naturally. They have to, it's part of your job. But what about some of these other professions or job roles? Do you think that, I don't know whether your data shows that, Mervyn, whether there are certain areas that social media yet hasn't had an impact?
No, I mean, we don't dig that deeply into the research. I mean, it's just general job seekers. I suppose the immediate thought is that there will be some professions that attract a certain type of character that possibly is slightly more reserved. I mean, if we go down to Myers-Briggs, and if
let's not.
I'm sure I was watching. I'm sorry for raising it, but yeah, it tends to be E's and N's that are probably more open on social media than I's and S's, except for you. But,
well, and I do wonder if it's not necessarily industry, but by position within an organization, because the higher you go within an organization, the less likely someone is going to be using social media. So I think it's LinkedIn has like 16% adoption rate with CEOs. It's a very small adoption rate. Directors, managers, that level may be on LinkedIn, and they may be on there more frequently than Facebook, right? Because it's a professional network. So I think it's probably by level within an organization, and maybe also by the validity and the credibility of the social networking platform.
But if you look at it by level as well, isn't that just the pyramid effect?
It is.
The fact that you've got fewer people there anyway.
But it's 16%. It's a percentage of a population, not necessarily. It's apples to apples when you're looking at the maths that way. So it's 16% of CEOs versus 40% of maybe
16% of LinkedIn
Right,
on seats.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
If you go back to what you were saying with the scientists, and they're very collaborative and they're on forums. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's kind of a social media. It's
Yeah,
much
yeah.
older and it's not
But
included in social
a
media.
different social media. So they won't
This is the point I was about to
necessarily
make.
be on
About
LinkedIn.
social media shouldn't have to just be about these
Yeah.
4 or 5 platforms.
No.
Yeah.
It's about how those. Go back to
Where to
signposting
find
again.
them.
It's kind of like those social platforms often direct you to a place in a building where 100 people meet and hear a couple of genius people talk about some stuff, and they'll share beers afterwards.
But I've actually
That's
hired
social media.
scientists, and scientists
Yeah.
are hired through efforts on niche job boards. They're
Yeah.
hired through adverts in their trade publications, and also through alumni associations. That's how you
Right,
hire
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
chemists, chemical engineers. So I think at some of these specialized, when you're in the STEM field, you go into specific narrow points of focus to
Yeah.
get somebody you want.
Of course,
But
yeah.
if you're hiring in the retail space, right, you can use Facebook. You can use a tool
Yeah.
to just blast the job out there, and it's spraying your job out there, and somebody will eventually
Yeah.
catch a whiff.
So
and
you
track
would
this
probably say, so the company, so going from the company angle, that because there's no point job seeker going to Twitter to find a job in science if actually the companies aren't going to be
No,
able to
yeah,
hire
they're
through
not.
Twitter anyway. So the behaviour kind of goes 2 ways, doesn't it?
It does.
I know we kind of go and find where the job seekers go, but also the job seeker has to go where the people are hiring too.
Yeah.
There
So,
is
yeah.
a social network specifically for scientists, actually, and I forget what that's called, but also I guess for me it's about finding the key influencers within an industry sometimes.
Yes,
Because I think,
that's
whether
it.
that be a blogger or whether it just be people, because they can often lead you again to
That's what I
find where
always
those
say is
people are.
the value of those kind of weird and wonderful. A mate of mine who's in mining, tunnelling recruitment, I know.
No, that's
massive
come
project.
on.
Well, we set the challenge 2 years ago. We'd finished some of the work that we were doing in the day, and we sat down at the pub with the beer and everything. I opened the laptop, and he was like, "There's no way in the world I'm going to find anybody in my industry on Twitter." And I'm saying, right, okay, we're not necessarily going to find the people who are underground doing the tunnelling because Wi-Fi is rubbish down there. But let's open up. And you told me, as Bill would call it, use the geek words. What are the phrases that people use within your... So, and from his perspective, it's kind of like, who do you connect with? Who are you going to connect with on this kind of thing if we're going to set this up? So we did the searches for the kind of like the geek, just through twitter.com, no special plan, just use twitter.com to find the tweet. And because he's got global business, so he doesn't have any kind of geographical restraints. And of course there was loads of people who talk, but they are journalists, they are the influencers. And so I said to Steve, right, okay, in that case what you've got to do now then is start connecting with these people. It's a sideline to your day to day.
Right.
See who their followers, see who follows them, start connecting with the people who are. But the point is, if these people are the broadcasters, that they're doing it through traditional methods, they're doing it through online methods because they're appealing to how their audience is. If they know you as the most proactive, socially integrated recruiter within the network, because you share stuff with them, you contact stuff with them, then that puts you on a plateau that makes, and one day one of those guys might just say or refer you,
or
when somebody
retweet.
says, where the hell do we find these miners or whatever, who do they think of first? Well, that guy who comments on our blogs and writes them. So there are ways of finding influence. Now, I think job seekers can use that exactly in the same way as well. And I've seen great examples obviously in our kind of social media industry where there's lots of influencers because it's a very wide kind of network. I think the credit 1% is a heck of a lot of people. LinkedIn's top 5% is still a whole lot of but job seekers can use the same way if they're smart enough, and I've seen people do it who tap into who the most influential people are within the industry, who writes the most prominent blogs, who kind of talks most on it, where do they go, stalk them generally for a little bit, we've seen some good job seeker stalking, and be in the same places and become friendly, familiar with these kind of people, and it catapulted their credibility as a job seeker because they used influence as well, and that's
I'm a
That's
living
a clever
example
job.
of this, by the
Oh,
way,
are
in
you?
the
Yeah.
human resources community. If I charge 10% of everybody who got a job through someone I knew, it's a recruitment firm. It's a business for me, and we were talking about this. I think, especially within the HR industry, there's 5, 6, maybe 10 people stateside who are the infrastructure, and they're the hubs, and we spoke out in a lot of different ways. And I know myself, my good friend Alexandra Levitt, who's here, Jennifer McClure, we're constantly putting together really talented HR job seekers with really great SVPs and chief HR officers, and I swear to you, even if I had a nickel from every person who was hired through one of my connections, I'd buy drinks tonight. So there is something out there for social influencers
Laurie
to think about. Instead, you'll buy me a drink.
All I heard was she's buying drinks.
Edit your stuff out.
It's quite fun. I like having that, and it makes Twitter fun for me, so I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And that's it, and that is where a lot of the talk around social media, making a big noise and everything, it goes back to that return on irrelevancy. You know, the lurkers, the people who observe but don't engage, actually are very important conduits of information. They're very important at saying, well, actually I saw this, I read that, and linking somebody else there.
And the culture of social is very generous.
Yes, that's it. A lot of people give their time. A lot of people, a lot of the people making money in the space today, consulting, spend a year, 15 months doing this for free, effectively.
Yeah, basically.
But that's a really interesting point. And the networking session that we did yesterday, I think it's Jacko said, you know, if anybody wants, you know, for me to point them in the direction, I'm happy to do that. And I think, you know, in my handle, one of the things I've built myself is a social animal, which I am, and that extends then into a social network. And I think those people that are active, it's basically, that's just another channel to be social in.
It is.
Now your challenge is to monetize it, personally. Good luck with that.
Are we assuming here that we're all kind of like-minded individuals sat in this group? And are we really assuming that, for example, these graduates who are just starting out, and they might be working in finance, they might be working in logistics, operations, wherever they are they educated, and are they going to do this? I mean, are we just assuming?
They've grown up. The people who enter the workforce now have grown up with Facebook. They haven't grown up. They've not grown up with a landline phone. They've rarely ever used one, except for their parents to pay for the call. They start off on mobile, pay as you go, so they don't really talk to people. They message people. Everything they organise socially pretty much is done through Facebook. My son's 18. He's got a couple of friends who won't use Facebook. So they want to be different. But obviously that relies on the guys who are using Facebook to let them know. Oh, by the way, we're all going to the pictures tomorrow. We're all going to the movies tomorrow. So they don't know, they know nothing different, and this is a point I've been making for a few years. When these people come into the workforce, they're not going to pick up the phone. The guys that you take into your offices around the world, you know, in 2-3 years' time, you recruit a graduate, they're not going to make 50 calls. I know you're not a cold calling business, but they find a way to find information, find connections, and find a way to connect with somebody.
But there is still a little bit of a gap in knowledge, or that leap from, this is a network that I can now leverage to find a job. And because how do I do that? And then even understanding that their Facebook group, and I don't know anybody that can help me find a job, but you know, it might be somebody's father, or who do they know, or who did they work with, or it's. I think there is a bit of a connection or a leap of faith.
But all they have to do is Google use social media to find a job, right?
Oh, there are a million people blogging on it.
We've just released a job site video, how to use social media. Job
but they get to look at your face doing it, though.
Well, no, they can switch.
Just after breakfast.
They can just listen to the sound and blank out the screen.
No, I think there's. I don't know where. Because of what I see, yes, they're socially active. They operate. Their behaviours are different as people. But I think still the methods, they're reactive with their methods. I think they react to what they're given, the methods that they're given. This is what I'm seeing.
But how is that different?
I'm talking about the most. Because I recruit social media driven people, so I'm talking about the people who really should be reading about this stuff and kind of should be the most smart.
Maybe they
still generally not yet got that smart commercial approach to work, just because.
But
who is there to advise them genuinely? Who is there? Apart from this video.
Pre-social media, the same thing. Someone goes into a new job and they're not told, right, you really shouldn't get drunk at the first couple company things. Right. You should be the most well-behaved, and they didn't do it, and then right. And so it's an experience and an education, and it's just life lessons.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking in that way. They're thinking, when's the next party? How can I do this? Where are all the cool people hanging out? How can I be cool? that's the number one thing that most kids are thinking.
And also older workers, I think, too, don't realize that this could be a benefit to them and a benefit to ending some long-term unsustainable unemployment that they faced. Instead, they're using social networking and they're on there for extended periods of time. I've found this with older workers, and they're looking at pictures, they're connecting with family members, they're looking at quilts or recipes. When it should be you have a plan and you have a strategy as a job seeker on social media, and then you get off and you translate that into real-world connections. So I think always on the edges of any generation.
But I mean, there's also then an embarrassment. They're very proud. They don't want people to know they're I won't use the word desperate, but they don't want people to know that they're really looking. They don't want people to know that in their eyes they've if you like fallen to having to go on Twitter looking for work.
God forbid, I know.
So I know, but
true,
whereas it is, and that's why again, although they might not be savvy, which I mean, connections have always done it. I mean, most of the people you recruit, without getting political here, probably come from a fairly middle class or so background, graduates. They've used to growing up with, you know, someone's dad who they know probably can get them an internship somewhere. So it's an extension of that kind of thing. But it's actually flattens it out for more. And I mean, what will happen in probably 10 years' time is that some 30-year-old will get involved in a startup and need a CFO to advise, and kind of they won't go to Hydrix anymore. It'll just be anybody know anybody, and then somebody they're at primary school with say, hey, do you remember Charlie was at primary school? He's now an FD somewhere, and I had a beer with him last week. He's not happy, and that's the kind of way. But that's obviously a few years hence.
Well, I think it's happening now. I mean, look at the tech scenes around the world, right? It was Silicon Valley forever, right? That was the place you had to go, and it was insular, and there was no access. You had to do it, you had to go be there, and then you try to take what you learned from that month and bring it somewhere else, but by the time you got back, they've already advanced. And now the Dublin, London, Russia, Berlin tech scenes are booming because they've constant streams.
Raleigh, Durham. I just have to give a plug for that. It's the number 2 tech city in America, according to Forbes. So yeah, it's growing. So yeah.
Raleigh, Durham.
Raleigh, Durham.
But you're
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
You're constantly connected. You're constantly having. There's like the hangouts we're doing right here. That's happening over there. You find the hashtag of the specific event that's going on from a pitch. You know, people pitching. And we're like, oh, these are the best companies. You go look at them, see what they're doing. You get ideas about what they're doing, and you change. So and obviously tech people are going to be early adopters on everything, but it's happening already. It allows you, before the only way to get into those circles were to physically go. And now you can virtually do it.
Yes. I'd still say there's an extension, the face-to-face thing, but I mean, I guess it can be. Yeah,
but it gets you in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think because I think the people who, I mean, I look at how this industry has developed as somebody who's worked in the social industry in London for the last kind of 3.5 years now, and how I've seen it develop in that time, is that the people who've progressed and gained the exposure and the opportunities, and the people who got off the backside from behind their laptop and went and did something about stuff, and went to listen and went to learn and gleaned information, because every excuse to have a beer has some information to go with it. So you either went for the beer or the information, but I get the impression the form was probably most of it, but you learn along the way of getting beer. Brilliant. But that culture grew. Mervyn and I are active on that scene now of kind of having lots of beer with some information. Slightly less beer than last year. But the point is, it's kind of that's how I gain visibility. It's how people within the industry have gained visibility for whatever kind of area, just by making an effort, and people appreciate networking effort. And that's why I think the same thing applies to job seekers. And so they've got job seekers who got themselves off their laptop and went and integrated and got involved in their market. Now this can happen in any market. It doesn't have to be a social media market. But everybody's got a networking scene. Every industry's got events, calendar, and all that kind of stuff. These are people who go and get involved and shake hands with people and say hello to people and spread the word that they're looking for a job.
One of the interesting things that going back to the quarterly research, one of the things with job seekers that is over the last year, 18 months, grown in popularity are career fairs.
Oh, really?
To actually go and physically, rather than just do the research online,
old is new
to actually
again.
go and meet people and talk to them.
Clothes as well.
Yeah. Career fairs, huh?
Right.
I love it.
So we've learned that career fairs and libraries are the way to go. We're back in 1992 again.
Remember, write your CV out in your best handwriting, put it in an post it.
Well, some really interesting debate. I think we could probably keep going for another hour on this, but we're going to have to stop. But perhaps we could just very quickly go around and say, well, you know, if we were trying to advise candidates in terms of the best way to use social media or...
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, kind of the theme I've been saying the whole time, and exactly what I just went through 3 months ago, is it is a directory. Signpost is a great term as well, as for everything. And even there's a lot. I hear a lot, especially my little sister's, you know, around to graduate right now, and all of her friends are saying, you know, I don't know what I want to do this. Go on there, read through things. Where do you want to be in 10 years? See what people have got them to that point. There's so many new jobs out there that didn't exist a year ago. Like community manager is a big one that's showing up. Like how to keep people involved in doing things. What are you good at and how can you apply it? And then go search social media and go to events. Absolutely, you have to go.
So my advice to job seekers is that if you want to go out and learn how to use social media and you want to follow people and you want to lurk, don't do it under your own name. So when you create a profile, use a fake name, use a nickname, a made-up name, call yourself Mickey Mouse 1942 or whatever, but just try to obscure who you are. It gives you an opportunity to just be anonymous and learn, and you can make mistakes and nobody knows.
Social media is a good... No, that's in the video.
Here we go.
Yeah, number one, it's research. So you can use it to research an industry. No, most people know the kind of job they want to do, the kind of industry they want to work in. And social media is a great way to actually find out what's going on, follow some of the key people. Very easy using Google to search and find out who's talking about, who's blogging about specific things in fashion or digital media or whatever. Follow those, start to get involved online, just share. You might only have 20 followers, doesn't matter. Share people's blogs, comment on it, and get a name for yourself as somebody who has an interest and passion in that industry.
Okay. My advice, I think, would be that what goes on social media stays on social media, and just and to be aware of what you want your own brand persona to be, and that you are in control of it, and you know, you have that opportunity to create who you want to be, but you can change it perhaps along the way a little bit too.
My advice would be kind of half the things I've said already, but it would probably be about being brave, about don't be scared to just communicate and talk with people, because that's what people post stuff on social media for. So get involved in the conversation. It's how you learn, it's how you connect with people, it's how you create opportunities.
And I would just finish by saying to be authentic, so to stand behind who you are as a person and to make sure that you can stand behind what you're saying and you're not posting something that's rude or crude or whatever else, but you know, just think about who you are and be prepared to talk about that in an interview, because you may well have to.
Very good. Thank you.